When I was 15, my parents told my cousins I was the family parasite. My dad chuckled and said, "She's only good at eating and crying." I spent the next 3 days sleeping in a public library. 5 weeks later they found me working a job. They thought I could never get and froze when they saw who I was with. I grew up in Kent, Washington, in a cul-de-sac neighborhood that looked nice enough from the outside but had an invisible layer of pressure tucked behind each closed door. Everyone pretended their families were fine. Ours was no different. My parents, Angela and Bernard, held an image of perfection tighter than they ever held me. Every family gathering was a performance and I always played the part of disappointment. By 15, I had already been labeled too sensitive, lazy, unmotivated. My cousins were academic prodigies and star athletes. I doodled in the corners of my school notebooks and volunteered at the animal shelter, because animals at least didn't belittle me. At a Memorial Day family barbecue, the moment that changed, everything happened. It wasn't a fight or a dramatic meltdown, it was just a sentence. My dad standing next to the grill, beer in hand, cracking jokes with my uncle like they were on stage. "She's only good at eating and crying," he said, "real parasite." They all laughed. I was 6 feet away, reaching into a cooler for a soda. I don't think he knew I hurt him, or maybe he did. Maybe he didn't care. The laughter didn't echo in my ears, it branded me. I didn't cry, not then, not until after midnight, when the house was silent and the party leftovers were still on the counter. I packed a canvas tote with a change of clothes, a few snacks, my phone charger and the $42 I had saved babysitting for our neighbor. I left my phone on my pillow so they wouldn't track me. The downtown Kent Public Library became my home. I knew from a field trip that the second floor had an overlooked reading loft. The bathrooms were clean. It was quiet, safe. On the second night I met a janitor named Rosa who gave me a granola bar and a blanket. She didn't ask many questions. I stayed for 3 nights, alternating between reading, watching the rain through tall windows and wondering if they even noticed I was gone. On the 4th day I went to the community job board at the youth center. Most jobs wanted 16 and up, but a handwritten flyer said dishwasher needed Penny's Diner cash. Ask for Lupe. Penny's was the kind of place that still had red booths and a pie display case. Lupe was the kind of woman who could read a person in one glance. She looked at me, narrowed her eyes and said, "You clean? Yes, you show up. Yes, you hungry? Yeah, all right, then you start now. No paperwork, no questions, just work." That kitchen became my haven. Lupe's rules were clear: do your job, don't lie, don't steal and respect the space. I mopped floors, washed dishes and learned to stack orders on the line. I slept a few nights in the stockroom and sometimes on the couch at Lupe's sister's place when she noticed me nodding off between shifts. One day, when a line cook quit mid-shift, Lupe handed me an apron and said, "You're on grill now. Don't burn the hash browns." I didn't. I found rhythm in the chaos: plates, pans, orders, grease-splattered tiles. It all made sense in a way my family never did. About 5 weeks in, during a packed Sunday brunch, the diner bell rang. I was mid-shift, focused flipping pancakes and sliding eggs onto plates. Lupe glanced at the door and went still for a moment. Then she leaned toward me and asked quietly, "You, okay?" I turned. My parents were standing just inside the entrance. Bernard wore his usual iron polo. Angela's lips were pursed like she was holding in 1,000 judgments. My cousins were there too, Terence and Eva, both dressed like they were ready for a country club brunch, not a greasy spoon. They just stared. My hair was tied back, I was in a stained apron holding a spatula, and I looked them right in the eye. No fear, no shame. I turned back to the grill. They didn't speak, didn't order. After a few minutes of awkward hovering they left. Lupe didn't ask. I didn't explain. I kept working. In the months that followed I started stashing money in a tin box. Lupe introduced me to her friend, Mr. Alden, a retired high school counselor who volunteered on weekends. He helped me get a prepaid phone and sign up for a GED program. I passed it in under a year, not because I was a genius, because someone believed I could. At 17, I enrolled in community college. I worked nights at the diner, took graphic design classes during the day. I still remember the night I stayed up until 4 a.m. learning how to use Illustrator. In the back office I fell asleep on a box of paper towels by 19. I had a small freelance portfolio, logos for a dog grooming business, posters for a local band, menus for Penny's Diner. Lupe framed the one I made for her. Then one day I saw a post online, an open call for young designers. A Seattle-based startup was launching a new app and wanted fresh perspectives. There was a cash prize. I entered, not expecting anything. I won second place and with it a paid internship and a mentor named Joy, an art director, who changed my life in the quietest, most powerful way. She taught me how to see the world differently, how to trust my ideas, how to ask for more than survival. 3 years later, I was working full-time in Seattle designing campaigns and storyboarding animations. I wore the same worn hoodie on late-night calls with clients that I had washed dishes in. Then one day I was asked to speak at an event, Women in Design from Scratch to Studio at a Bellevue hotel. I hesitated. Public speaking wasn't my thing. But Joy said something I'll never forget. You have a story people need to hear. The day of the event, I stood behind the podium with a mic clipped to my collar, scanning the room. My slideshow had just the right mix of design tips and personal anecdotes. And halfway through I saw them, Angela, Bernard, Terrence, second row from the back. They weren't smiling, just watching. I didn't skip a beat. I finished my talk, got polite applause, answered a few questions, then packed up my things and there they were. Angela stepped forward. You've changed. I looked her in the eyes. No, you just never knew who I was. Bernard tried to laugh. You're really doing all this. I did it without you. They looked like they wanted to say more, but I was already walking away after that night in Bellevue. I didn't hear from them for a while. There was no follow-up call, no email, no sudden rush of regret or apology, and honestly, I preferred it that way. I wasn't looking for closure. I had already built it myself. But the silence wasn't as satisfying as I thought it would be. There's a strange emptiness that comes with realizing the people you once begged to see. You are finally looking and it no longer matters. About 3 weeks later I got a message. It was from my cousin, Eva. Simple, no greeting, can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. I debated, ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. I replied cautiously, what for? It's not about your parents, I just want to talk. I think I owe you something. We met in a coffee shop in Renton. She was early, already seated clutching a mug of chai like it was armor. When I walked in, she stood quickly, nervous. Her eyes looked tired in a way I hadn't seen before. Thanks for coming, she said. I nodded, sat. There was a long pause before she finally blurted out, I'm sorry I didn't say anything, for everything, for not saying anything that day, for laughing. When Uncle Bernard made that joke I didn't even think it was funny, I just laughed because everyone else did. Still I didn't speak. I wanted to know where this was going. Eva continued. You know, after you left they acted like it was no big deal, like you were throwing a tantrum or something. But the truth is your mom lost it quietly, in her own way. She didn't tell anyone, just stayed in her room for days, then suddenly started volunteering at church like nothing happened. I blinked, that didn't track with the woman I remembered and your dad. She went on, acted like nothing happened. But we all knew he was shaken, especially after they found you at that diner. He stopped making jokes at family gatherings for a while. They didn't even bring your name up. There was something in her voice, guilt maybe, or uncertainty. She looked down at her hands. I just wanted to say that I saw you that day at the diner and you didn't look scared, you looked like you didn't need us anymore, and I think that scared them more than you running away. The words settled between us like dust. I still didn't quite know what to say. What do you say to someone who silently watched you get discarded like an afterthought? I used to envy you, she added, her voice lower. Now you didn't care what anyone thought. You liked what you liked. You had your own world. I was always chasing someone else's approval. Now, that was ironic. We didn't hug, we didn't cry. We just sat there, two people who had grown up in the same family but lived two completely different lives. Eventually, we talked about neutral things, work, Seattle traffic, podcasts. She paid for our drinks as I walked out. She said you deserved better from all of us, and she was right. But by that point I had already started giving myself better. Her apology didn't rewrite anything, but it didn't need to. A few weeks later, I was sitting in the design studio when Joy walked in and dropped a folder on my desk. Guess what? She grinned. What? Your campaign pitch got approved. We're flying out next month. You'll be leading the concept presentation. I stared at her, unsure. If I heard right, she laughed. You better start picking an outfit. You're not just the intern anymore, kid. That night I sat in my apartment eating leftover takeout and thinking about everything that had happened over the last 6 years. The girl who slept under the skylight in a public library, the girl who thought she'd never amount to anything, the girl they once called a parasite. She was still there somewhere inside me, but now she had a voice, a job, a future and, most importantly, a choice. I hadn't yet decided what to do about my parents, whether to give them another chance or keep the distance. I didn't need to decide right away. That's the thing about healing, it doesn't come with deadlines. Sometimes you carry the wound a while before the scar forms. But I did decide one thing that night: I would never again sit at a table where I was the punchline. A few months passed, I kept my head down and poured everything into my work. It felt good, in a quiet, honest way. There were no grand declarations, no applause, just steady progress. I was learning how to be proud without needing someone else to notice. But then, around early spring, something shifted. It started with a voicemail: "Hi, it's your mom. I got your number from Eva." "Hi, I don't even know what to say, but I was wondering if you'd be open to meeting sometime. Just us, please." I didn't answer. I let it sit for days. Then she called again. No voicemail this time, then again not aggressive, not demanding, just repeated. For the first time I felt like she actually wanted to speak to me, not the version of me she had constructed and criticized for most of my life. Still, I wasn't sure. I brought it up to Joy after work one night as we walked to the parking garage. "She's reaching out," I said, trying to sound casual. Joy didn't offer advice right away, she just gave me that look, the kind that says I'll be here either way. "You want to see her?" She finally asked. "I don't know." That's an okay answer too. A few weeks later I agreed to meet a coffee shop, public and neutral. I picked the one downtown by the transit center, busy enough that neither of us could spiral into a scene. She was already there when I arrived. She looked older, not in the physical sense, but in a worn-down kind of way. Her posture was slightly slouched, her eyes heavier than I remembered. Her hands were wrapped around a mug that was probably too hot to hold, but she didn't seem to notice. When I sat down, she looked up startled, like she wasn't sure I would really come. "You look good," she said softly. I didn't say anything at first, just nodded. There was a long silence. People around us chatted, the espresso machine hissed in the background. A toddler giggled somewhere behind us, but between us it was still. "I owe you 1,000 apologies," she finally said, "and I know you don't owe me a single thing, but I just needed to say that I'm sorry for everything." Her voice cracked a little, but she didn't cry. That almost surprised me. She was always the composed one, the one who didn't let emotions show unless it served her. I studied her face. This wasn't a performance, or at least it didn't feel like one. "You let him humiliate me in front of the whole family," I said quietly. "You let him call me names. You never stopped him and you never once asked if I was okay." She swallowed hard. "I didn't know how to stop him," she said. "I didn't have the strength, or maybe I did, and I was just too scared, and that's on me." I didn't interrupt. "I thought I was parenting you into success," she said. "I thought if I pushed you hard enough you'd rise above it. But I see now, I was only pushing you away." It wasn't a dramatic scene. She didn't collapse in tears or beg for forgiveness. It was quiet, simple, just a woman finally owning the things she had long refused to. And for the first time in my life, I saw her not as my mother, but as a person, a deeply flawed one, a scared one, a woman who had grown up in a house where emotions were currency and expectations were brick walls. "You don't get to take credit for what I've done," I said calmly. "None of it happened because of you. It happened in spite of you." I know we sat there letting that truth settle. Eventually she asked about my job, about Lupe, about the people who took me in. When she didn't, I told her about Penny's Diner, about Mr. Alden and the GED program. I told her about the internship and the campaign I was flying out to lead. I told her about my first solo project. How the client cried when they saw the final animation and said it was exactly what they didn't know they needed. She smiled at that, a faint, genuine smile. "You always had it in you." She said. "No," I corrected, "I earned it." She nodded, not defensively, just accepting. "I'm not asking to be part of your life again," she said finally. "I just want you to know that I'm proud of you, even if I never deserved to be." There was something achingly human in that moment, a small, broken reconciliation that didn't fix the past but didn't pretend to either. I left the cafe with no promises, no commitments, just clarity. She would have to rebuild from scratch if I ever let her. Later that week Eva texted again, "My brother's getting married this summer. The whole family's invited. Just thought you should know, no pressure." I stared at the message. A family wedding, the kind of event that used to leave me feeling small, invisible, the kind where I'd be compared, criticized or ignored altogether. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't the parasite, I wasn't the disappointment, and part of me wondered what it would feel like to walk in there now, not for them but for me, just to see their faces when they realized the version of me they discarded had become someone they never could have imagined. The wedding was held at a winery outside of Olympia, very picture perfect, very Instagram curated. Everything from the hand-lettered place cards to the string quartet in the courtyard screamed curated elegance. My cousin Reed, yes, the football scholarship golden boy, was finally tying the knot and the whole family was invited. Eva sent me another text, if you come, bring whoever you want. Seriously, I hope you do. I debated it for weeks. Part of me thought why bother? But another part, the part that used to shrink when my dad laughed at me. The part that sat alone in a library corner at 15 wondering if I mattered, wanted to walk in through the front doors and let them see what they threw away. So I RSVP'd. I brought Joy as my +1, not as a date, but as someone who had seen me become the version of myself they never believed could exist. She was happy to come, said she always wanted to see how the other half lived. She wore a deep navy suit with silver accents. I wore a tailored maroon jumpsuit and my hair up in a soft twist. We looked like we belonged, because we did. When we arrived, we walked slowly through the garden entrance, heads turned, I could feel it, that murmur of recognition mixed with disbelief. I hadn't seen most of them in years. Some of them squinted like they were trying to place me. Angela spotted me first. Her reaction was subtle, just a breath caught mid-sentence. Bernard was talking to some other guests. When he turned and caught sight of me, he froze, literally froze, like he was watching a ghost. I didn't smile, I didn't wave, I just kept walking. The ceremony was outdoors under a canopy of flowers. Joy and I took our seats near the middle rows. I could feel eyes on me the whole time, and not because I looked good, but because my presence was a mirror they didn't expect to face. After the vows, during the cocktail hour, Eva found me by the bar. You really came, she said, almost in awe. I told you I'd think about it. I said, you look incredible. I know we both laughed. A few others came over to say hello, some cousins I barely remembered, others who had once sided with my parents but now acted like they always believed in me. I let them talk. I didn't give much back. I was polite, not warm. Then Bernard approached Angela, followed 2 steps behind, looking less certain than I'd ever seen her. I wasn't sure you'd come. He said I know. I replied flatly. There was an awkward pause. He scratched the back of his neck, trying to smile, well, you look great, doing well. Huh, better than ever. Joy stepped up beside me, not saying anything, just standing there, steady as always. Bernard glanced at her, clearly unsure who she was. This is Joy, I said, creative director at my firm and the person who gave me my first shot when no one else would. Angela tried to smile, it's really impressive what you've done. You had every chance to see it before. I said quietly, but you were too busy laughing. The words didn't come out bitter or angry, just factual, like I was reading them. A headline from an old paper. Still, the impact landed. Bernard opened his mouth, closed it. I don't want your approval, I said, my voice calm. I never needed it, but I figured just this. Once you should see what happened after you stopped seeing me. I took a sip from my drink and stepped past them. Later that night, after the dancing had started, Joy and I stepped out to the terrace to watch the sunset. The winery overlooked a field of golden grass that waved in the breeze like an ocean. It was quiet, peaceful. I could hear the music faintly behind us, laughter, clinking glasses, someone shouting cheers, and for the first time in a long time I felt still. I didn't need them to be sorry. I didn't need them to change, I didn't need them at all. They were spectators. Now I had taken back the pen and I was writing my own story. Before we left, Eva found me again. I hope we can keep talking. She said I'd like to really know you this time. We'll see. I said honestly. She nodded. She understood Joy, and I left before the bouquet toss. I didn't need to catch anything. I already had everything I needed. The drive back was quiet, the stars came out. I leaned my head against the window, watching the road stretch ahead of us wide and open. I thought about that scared girl with a duffel bag and $42 in her pocket. Furthermore, I thought about the night she curled up in the library not knowing what would come next. Furthermore, I wanted to reach back in time and tell her you were never a parasite, you were a seed, and they just didn't know how to water you. But you found your own light. You bloomed anyway.